I'm 32 years old. And 4 weeks ago my parents threw me a birthday dinner just to publicly cut me out of the family in front of everyone. 52 relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, packed into a private room at the Gilded Swan, the fanciest spot in the city. I walked in believing it was a surprise party. I walked out, well, let me tell you that part. But here's what my parents never saw coming. They weren't the only ones with a plan that night. The woman sitting in the back corner, the sister they'd written out of our lives 22 years ago, she'd been waiting for this moment. Before I take you back to that evening, hit like if this story speaks to you, only if it really does. And I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city and the time right now in the comments. Now let me take you back 5 weeks to the phone call that started it all. I was wrist deep in slip-cast porcelain when my phone buzzed. The studio smelled like damp clay and cold coffee. I almost didn't pick up. Then I saw the screen. My mother doesn't call. She sends brittle, clipped texts that feel like memos. So when her name lit up the display, my stomach flipped. I wiped my hands on my coveralls and answered. Celia. Her voice was syrup-sweet, almost tender. First red flag. I hope I'm not interrupting your little projects. I'm working, Mom. What's up? Your father and I have been talking. She let the pause hang. We think it's time the family reunited for your 32nd. I nearly dropped the phone. In 32 years, my mother had never once called my birthday important. Most years it slipped by unnoticed. On my 30th I waited by the phone all night. No call. Not from her, not from Dad, not from my brother Simon. A family dinner? I heard myself say. For my birthday? Everyone wants to see you, she said, her tone tightening just a notch. Don't be late. Saturday 7 p.m. The Gilded Swan. The Gilded Swan. The priciest restaurant around. The place where they announced Simon's law partnership. The place for celebrations that mattered to them. I'll be there, I said. Good. I stood there in my studio, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. My hands shook, leaving smudges of gray clay on the screen. Something felt wrong. But hope, that sneaky, stubborn thing, hissed in the back of my mind. Maybe they've turned a corner. Maybe this time is different. I should have listened to my gut. 3 days later, Simon appeared at my studio door. He never visits. Not once in the 4 years I've rented this space. But there he stood in his tailored wool coat, looking around like he'd entered a zoo. Quaint spot, he said. It wasn't kind. What do you need, Simon? He picked up a glazed bowl, inspected its underside, set it down too hard. I've been thinking about Gran's cabin. There was the real reason. The lake house isn't for sale. It's just sitting there, Celia. He finally looked at me. My firm is bleeding money. Gran left it to me. That was her choice. Simon's jaw twitched. Gran's gone. She doesn't need a lake house. But I need liquidity. The family needs that asset. I set my rib tool down. Slowly. Carefully. That cabin is where Gran showed me how to throw my first plate. It's not just square footage to me. God, you're so emotional. He rolled his eyes. This is exactly why Mom and Dad. He cut himself off. Why Mom and Dad what? He smiled, that polished, empty smile he uses in court. Nothing. Forget it. You should come to dinner Saturday. Mom has plans. The word hung between us. Plans. I repeated. Mom. He was already walking out. See you there, sis. Or something decent. The whole family will be watching. The door clicked shut. I stood frozen among my kiln shelves and bisqueware, his words ringing. The whole family will be watching. What had I just walked into? I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the cabin, about Gran. Her name was Eleanor. Eleanor Vance. She was the only person in my family who ever made me feel like I belonged. I was 16 the first summer she brought me to that place. My parents had sent me away. Need structure, they'd said. I arrived furious and closed off, ready to hate it all. But Gran didn't try to correct me. She just handed me a wedge of clay. Your hands build things, Celia, she'd said, guiding my palms on the wheel, her voice soft over the sound of the lake outside. That's a gift your mother will never see. It was the first time anyone had called anything about me a gift. Not a flaw, not a burden. A gift. Every summer after I returned, we crafted pottery, watched the mist rise off the water at dawn, talked about life. She came to my first gallery showing at 23, the only relative who showed. She sat in the first row, eyes shining, clapping until her palms were pink. 7 months ago she died in her sleep. Peacefully, they said. She left me the lake house and a small cedar box I hadn't had the courage to open. The night before the dinner I finally understood what vanished when she died. It wasn't just her. It was my only evidence that I was worthy of love, my only witness. Without Gran, I had no one in that clan who truly saw me. Or so I believed. I didn't know someone else had been watching all along. The pressure built 3 days before the dinner. First it was subtle. A text from my cousin Jake. Hey, heard you might be selling the cabin. Really decent of you. I wasn't selling anything. Who told him that? Then Dad called. His voice was frost. Your mother is very hurt, Celia. I gripped the phone. About what? The property. You know what? He sighed, that long weary sigh I'd heard my whole life. We gave you every advantage. We tolerated your artistic interests even when they puzzled us. And now when the family needs support you withhold. Gran left it to me, Dad. In her will. Her choice. Wills can be challenged. His voice dipped, low and deliberate. Family loyalty shouldn't require a legal document. The threat lingered. My chest tightened. Was I being cruel? That question had gnawed at me for weeks. Simon's firm was in trouble. My parents had funded his degree, his career. And there I sat on land worth a fortune. But every time I thought of giving in, I heard Gran's voice. Promise me, darling. Never let them shrink your soul. If you truly cared about this family, Dad pressed, you'd do what's right. Come to dinner. We'll talk it through like adults. And if I don't agree to sell? Silence. Then I suppose we'll know where your heart really lies. He hung up. I sat in the dark for hours that night doing the math. Sell the house, lose the last piece of her. Keep it, lose them. But a quiet voice whispered, did you ever really have them? The night before the dinner I took out the dress. Emerald green silk, ankle length with subtle copper threading at the sleeves. Gran gave it to me for my 25th birthday. For when you need to remember your own strength, she'd said. I hadn't worn it since her memorial. I laid it across my bed, staring, trying to believe tomorrow would be okay. That my parents truly wanted to celebrate me. That Simon's plans meant nothing. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was brief. Don't go tomorrow. It's a trap. My heart stalled. I typed back, who is this? 3 dots appeared, then vanished. When I called, the line was dead. I sat on the bed's edge, pulse racing. A joke? A wrong number? Or something else? My eyes fell on the cedar box on my dresser. Gran's box, the one I'd been too scared to open. Slowly I lifted the lid. Inside, a handwritten note, folded neatly. Under it, an old Polaroid. 2 young women, arms linked, laughing. One was unmistakably my mother, decades younger. The other, I didn't know. I unfolded the letter. Gran's handwriting, frail but clear. My dearest Celia, it began. I couldn't read it. Not yet. If I read it now, I'd lose the nerve I had left. I needed to believe for one more day that my parents might actually love me. I tucked the letter into my handbag just in case. Then I hung the emerald dress on my closet door and tried to sleep. Tomorrow everything would shift. I just didn't realize how much. If you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, type me 2 below. And if you want to hear what happened in that private room, hit like so I know you're with me. Now back to that night. The gilded swan glowed under the night sky. Crystal sconces, linen tablecloths, the kind of quiet that feels expensive. I'd only been here twice before, both times for Simon. The hostess brightened when I gave my name. Ah, the Bennett party. This way. She led me down a hall lined with vintage mirrors, past the main dining room through polished mahogany doors. Your private room, she said and swung them open. 52 faces turned toward me. I froze in the doorway. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen since grade school. Great-aunts I barely recalled. Second cousins whose names escaped me. They filled a huge crescent-shaped table dominating the space. All in their finest clothes. All staring. My heart thudded. This was a surprise party. It had to be. All these people here for me. But there were no decorations, no cake, no chorus of happy birthday. Just silence and stares. I spotted my parents at the table's head. Mom wore sapphires. Dad wore his boardroom face, blank, detached. Simon sat beside them studying his napkin. And in the center of the crescent, facing the entrance, was one empty chair. For me. I walked toward it slowly, heels tapping on herringbone wood, feeling every gaze like a touch. The room was too hushed, too still, like a theater before the curtain rises. A microphone stand waited near my father's seat. That's when I noticed her. A woman in the far corner, silver-streaked hair, watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. She looked vaguely familiar. Unnerved. My mother was smiling, that smile she wears right before victory. Celia. She gestured to the empty chair. Sit. We've all been waiting. I'd barely settled when my father stood. He picked up a water glass and a fork. Ting ting ting. The room fell silent, though it was already silent. Every eye moved from me to him. Thank you all for coming tonight. His voice carried like he was addressing a boardroom. We've gathered for a family matter. Not to celebrate Celia. A family matter. My stomach turned to stone. As many of you know, he continued, our daughter Celia has made choices that have concerned us. She left university. She declined a professional path. She's lived in a manner that doesn't align with our family's principles. Murmurs rustled through the room. Someone whispered, always was the wild one. My father's eyes found mine. Final. Claire and I have tried everything. Patients support council. But Celia refuses to evolve. She refuses to honor her family. My mother dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin. A masterpiece of performance. Therefore, my father said, as of tonight, we are making a formal declaration. He paused. The room held its breath. Celia Bennett is no longer considered a member of this family. The words landed like a punch. Gasps scattered. Cousin Mara covered her mouth. Uncle Robert shook his head slowly. Is this for real? Someone muttered. My mother stood, smoothing her skirt. We gave her every chance. Her voice quivered with manufactured sorrow. She chose disgrace over family. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 52 pairs of eyes drilled into me, and I was 16 again, being told I was too difficult to love. Then my mother reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded document. It landed before me with a soft thwop. Sign this, she said. And you can leave with some grace. I looked down. The words blurred, then focused. Legal letterhead, dense paragraphs, and at the bottom, a signature line with my name printed beneath it. Voluntary relinquishment of inheritance rights. The lake house. This was always about the lake house. It all clicked. The sudden invitation, the family matter, 52 witnesses dressed in their best. They hadn't assembled everyone to disown me. They'd assembled everyone to force me to sign away Gran's cabin. The disowning was just theater, leverage to break me. You orchestrated this, I breathed. We orchestrated an intervention, my mother corrected smoothly. For your own good. I spotted a man in a navy suit near the door. Mr. Alden, the family lawyer. He was already holding a notary seal, ready to make it all binding. My mother leaned in, her perfume overwhelming. 52 witnesses, Celia. Your grandmother's attorney won't be able to argue against that kind of family consensus. She tapped the paper. Sign. Walk away quietly. This doesn't need to get uglier. The room waited. I felt them watching. Some with pity, some with disdain, some with the grim curiosity of bystanders at a wreck. My hands shook. My vision swam. But beneath the panic, something else stirred, something solid. I thought of Gran's letter still folded in my bag. I thought of the woman in the corner, watching. My mother slid a pen toward me. Sign, she said. Yow. I picked up the pen. I know right now you might be as furious as I was in that moment. The pen in my hand. 52 people watching. My own mother's gaze boring into me like I was a malfunction to be fixed. If you've ever been used as a pawn by your own family, type "I see you" in the comments. And if you want to know what happened next, drop a like so I know you're still here. Now back to the restaurant. The pen hovered above the page. My hand wouldn't obey. "Sign it," my mother's eyes commanded. "And this." But something made me look up. Not at her, not at my father. At the room. 52 faces stared back. Most were strangers, relatives who appeared only at graduations and funerals, who sent holiday cards we never displayed. They'd been summoned as witnesses, as tools. And then I saw her again. The woman in the corner, hair swept back, wearing a simple charcoal dress that didn't beg for attention. She sat apart, partly shielded by a large fern. She wasn't looking at me with scorn or pity. She was looking at me like she was sending a signal. "Steady. Wait." I noticed her hands resting on a leather satchel in her lap. A bag that looked overstuffed. Bulging with something. Documents, perhaps. Or something else. My mother tracked my gaze. Her head snapped toward the corner, and for one flash I saw something cross her face. Dread. It vanished instantly, smoothed into cool composure. But I saw it. "Celia." My mother's voice was blade sharp. "Focus. Sign the paper." Who was this woman? Why did my mother, who feared nothing, look at her like that? And why did her face feel familiar, like a faded picture I couldn't quite place? "Celia." My father, now impatient. "We're all waiting." I set the pen down. "Not signing. Not yet. May I have a moment?" I said. "To collect myself." My mother's smile tightened. "Of course, dear." But her eyes kept flicking to the corner. The room pressed in. Whispers, stares, the weight of 52 judgments. But in the noise I heard another voice, soft, familiar, from somewhere deep in memory. "Never let them shrink your soul, darling. And if they try, you already have what you need." Gran had said that the last time I saw her, 10 days before she died. She'd held my hands, hers so thin by then, and looked at me with eyes that still blazed. "I left you more than a cabin, Celia." Her voice was a whisper, but fierce. "I left you the truth." I hadn't understood then. I was starting to now. Under the table my hand slipped into my bag. My fingers found the edge of the envelope. Gran's letter still unread. I'd been too afraid to open it last night, too desperate to believe this dinner might be genuine. That hope was dust now. Whatever was in that letter, Gran wanted me to have it. She'd known something about my mother, about this family, about what they'd try once she was gone. I looked at the room full of people who wanted me to vanish quietly. At my mother who'd staged this public trial. At my father who wouldn't meet my eyes. Then I looked at the woman in the corner. Still watching. Still waiting. Her hand on that full satchel. I wasn't alone. I didn't know how or why yet, but I wasn't alone. Something settled in my chest. Not calm. Resolve. "Actually," I said, my voice firmer than I expected, "I do have something to say." My mother's smile faltered. "What?" "Give me the microphone." My mother laughed, short, dismissive. "The microphone? Celia, this isn't a stage." "Then why is there a mic stand?" I nodded toward my father's seat. "You planned every detail. The seating, the witnesses, the lawyer with his notary stamp. You wanted an audience. Let me speak to them." A ripple of murmurs moved through the room. Uncle Robert shifted. Cousin Mara exchanged a look with her spouse. My mother's eyes narrowed. This wasn't her script. "Fine," she said, voice returning to syrup. "But first, let's ensure everyone understands exactly who we're dealing with." She straightened, addressing the room like a lawyer giving a summation. "My daughter had every opportunity. We offered to pay for business school. She refused. We offered her a role at the family office. She chose to play in mud instead." Someone snorted. I couldn't see who. "Her first gallery exhibit." My mother's voice dripped with pity. "Four people came. One of them was the delivery man asking for directions." Heat flooded my face. That show was 9 years ago. I'd wept for days afterward. And she'd saved the memory, weaponizing my lowest point for tonight. "And when she was 24, my mother continued, voice rising, Her little studio failed. Do you know what she did? She came to us, pleading for a loan. She turned to me, triumph in her eyes. She's always been the fragile one. Sensitive, unsteady. Is this the person you want clinging to your grandmother's estate? My eyes burned. But I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not for her. Are you finished? I asked quietly. My mother smiled. Sweetheart, I'm only beginning. She had no idea. So was I. That's when Simon stood. My younger brother, the golden child, the one who received everything I was denied. The praise, the backing, the faith. He pressed a hand to his chest, wearing a mask of exquisite pain. I tried, you know. I really tried with her. The room turned. I went to her studio last week. I asked if we could discuss Gran's cabin, find a middle ground. And you know what she told me? He paused. Perfect timing. He'd learned from our mother. She said Gran's cabin means more to her than her own blood. More gasps. Someone sked. That's not what I said, I cut in. It's what you meant. Simon's eyes met mine. Victorious. You've always valued objects over people. That's why you're on your own. I stared at him, my little brother whom I'd shielded from bullies, whom I'd covered for when he sneaked out at 15, whom I'd believed was just trapped in our parents' dysfunction. He wasn't trapped. He was part of it. He'd likely helped plan this whole charade. You see, my mother spread her hands. We have no choice. This is an intervention for her own good, my father added. For everyone's good, Simon finished. The three of them stood together at the table's head. A united front. A family without me. Uncle Robert leaned forward. Maybe you should just sign, Celia. Don't drag this out. Aunt Mara nodded. Think of your parents standing. The walls closed in. The room shrank. Then my father picked up the pen and extended it to me. Last chance. The pen hung between us. Black ink brushed steel. Such a small thing holding so much weight. Sign it, my mother said, or walk out that door and never contact any of us again. 52 people held their breath. I heard the clink of ice in glasses, the distant murmur of the kitchen, the tick of a wall clock. I looked at the document, the legalese blurring. But I understood enough. My signature gave them the cabin. Gran's cabin. The only place I'd ever felt whole. I looked at my parents. No love in their eyes, no remorse. Just impatience. They wanted this done. I looked at Simon. He bit his lip, feigning sadness. But I knew that look. That was his waiting for the win look. And I looked at the woman in the corner. She gave the faintest nod. Her hand moved to her satchel. Something shifted in my chest. Not hope. Something harder, clearer. No real family does this, I thought. Gran would never have wanted this. I've spent 32 years begging for their love. What if I stop? My hand closed around the pen. I felt its cool weight. My mother smiled. Then I set it down. No. The word dropped like a rock into a still pond. What did you say? My mother whispered. I said no. I pushed back my chair and stood. I'm not signing. But I am going to speak. I reached for the microphone. My father lurched to stop me, but I was quicker. You wanted an audience, I said into the mic, my voice clear in the quiet. Let me give you one. And I finally understood what Gran meant. I did have what I needed. The microphone felt solid, real, grounding. My mother's face paled. My father half rose, unsure whether to rush me or pretend this was planned. I didn't give them time to choose. Thank you all for coming tonight, I said, my voice steady, calmer than I felt. I have a few things to share. Celia, my mother began. You had your turn. I met her eyes. Now it's mine. The room shifted. I felt the attention swing toward me, not as the accused anymore but as someone with something to say. 7 months ago my grandmother, Eleanor Vance, passed. Most of you knew her. She was gentle. She was generous. She was the only person in this family who ever made me feel seen. A few people nodded. Gran had been loved. She left me her lake house. Not because I asked, not because I manipulated her. Because she wanted me to have it. My voice caught. I steadied it. Because she knew what would happen once she was gone. I reached into my bag. Before she died, she left me a letter. I was too scared to read it until last night. I pulled out the envelope. But I think it's time you all heard her words. My mother's face turned ashen. Celia, don't. Not a command now. A plea. But I was done listening. My dearest Celia, I began reading. If you're reading this at a family gathering, things have unfolded exactly as I worried they would. The room went utterly still. The woman in the corner stood. I continued, Gran's words filling the silence. Clara has always seen people as instruments. She tried to take this cabin from me 12 years ago. Tried to convince me I was too frail to manage my own life. When I refused, she stopped calling. I heard someone gasp, Aunt Mara, I think. I knew she'd try again with you, darling. She'll use obligation. She'll use family. She'll make you feel petty and heartless for keeping what's rightfully yours. I looked at my mother. Her hands gripped the table edge, knuckles white. But you are not petty. You are not heartless. And this cabin is not just real estate. It's proof that someone in this family loved you without strings. My voice wavered. I steadied it. I've left you something else too. Something your mother doesn't know exists. If you're reading this before witnesses, and knowing Claire you probably are, look for your Aunt Diana. My other daughter, the one Clara erased 22 years ago. The room erupted in whispers. Other daughter? Claire has a sister? I never knew. Diana has been waiting, I read on. She has evidence of everything Claire has done. Not just to you. To me. To her. To anyone who stood in her way. I lowered the letter and looked at the woman in the corner. She was standing now, a sad, knowing smile on her face. My mother had gone statue still. Hello, Clara, the woman said, her voice carrying. It's been 22 years. Did you ever think we'd meet here? My mother's mouth opened. No sound emerged. I had an aunt. And she'd been waiting for this moment for over 2 decades. Diana walked toward the table, the crowd parting like a tide. She moved with the calm of someone who had imagined this scene 1,000 times. Mom contacted me, she said, addressing the room. Before she passed. When Clara makes her move, she told me, be there for Celia. You have no right, my mother spat, voice shrill. You were removed. You're not part of this family. I was removed because I threatened to tell the truth. Diana stopped across from Clara. 22 years ago, I discovered what you were doing with Mom's finances. Skimming funds, forging her name, isolating her from anyone who might see. The whispers grew louder. Uncle Robert stood halfway, then sat back down. Lies, my mother hissed. She's always been envious. Unstable. That's what I told everyone. Diana nodded slowly. That I was unstable, delusional, that Mom couldn't rely on me. He turned to the room. But Mom never believed you. She just didn't have the energy to fight you anymore. Diana. My father's voice cut in. This is out of line. Whatever grudges you hold. Grudges. Diana laughed softly. Thomas, do you even know what your wife did? Or were you too busy pretending not to see? My father's jaw tightened. He looked away. I didn't come to rehash the past, Diana said. I came because Mom asked me to. Because she knew Clara would do to Celia exactly what she did to me, what she tried to do to her. She reached into her satchel and pulled out her phone. And because, she said quietly, I have proof. Diana held up her phone like an exhibit. Before Mom died, she gave me one last task. Her voice was steady, filling the silent room. She knew Clara would come for Celia eventually. She just didn't know when. My mother's face was slate gray. Diana, whatever you think you have. 4 months before she died, Mom placed a voice-activated recorder in her sunroom. Diana's eyes never left Clara's. She told me where to find it. Told me to wait until Clara showed her hand. She pressed play. The first voice was my mother's. Crystal clear. We'll do it at her birthday dinner. Maximum witnesses, maximum pressure. My father's voice next. And if she refuses to sign? She won't refuse. My mother again, confident, cold. She's always been the weak one. This will be simple. One public spectacle and she'll crumble. Then Simon. What if she causes a scene? Let her. My mother chuckled. 52 witnesses watching her unravel. That only helps us. We can say she's emotionally unfit. Contest the will on those grounds. Diana paused the recording. The room was frozen. Someone's sharp inhale. Uncle Robert had a hand over his mouth. There's more, Diana said quietly. 27 minutes of it. Every detail of tonight's scheme, including how you'd use all of them, she gestured to the relatives, as set dressing in your little play. That recording was illegal, my mother hissed, grasping. Single-party consent state, Diana replied, calm. Mom was in her own home. It's admissible. The silence stretched. Then Uncle Robert spoke, his voice heavy. Clara, what have you done? My mother had no answer. Now you might wonder, why did Diana help? Why wait 22 years? The answer is plain. Sometimes the people who rescue us are the ones who walk the same road first. Diana knew what it felt like to be erased by my mother. She wasn't about to let it happen twice. If you've ever had someone like that in your life, type yes below. And if you want to see how my mother reacted to being exposed, stay with me. The best part is coming. The room was still reeling when I took the microphone again. Not to attack, not to gloat. Just to be clear. Mom. Dad. I looked at them directly. You wanted to cut me out tonight? Consider it done. My mother opened her mouth. But not on your terms, I continued. On mine. I turned to the room. All 52 witnesses you so carefully gathered. I will not sign that paper. Not tonight. Not ever. My voice was steady now, steadier than I'd ever heard it. The lake house was left to me by my grandmother legally and rightfully. Her will was explicit. Her wishes were documented. I looked directly at Mr. Alden, the lawyer still clutching his useless notary stamp. And for the record, Grand's will includes a protective clause. Any document signed under coercion is automatically void. I gestured around. Your 52 witnesses. They just watched you try to coerce me. On tape. In a restaurant with full security cameras. Mr. Alden's face paled. He quietly slipped the stamp into his briefcase. That clause also states, I added, that any family member who attempts to contest the will through manipulation forfeits their own inheritance from the estate. I let that sink in. Watched my mother's jaw tighten. Watched my father's face strain. So by all means, Mom, contest it. See what you have left when you're done. Silence. Absolute silence. And one more thing. I set the microphone down with a soft thud. I didn't bring shame to this family. I brought disruption. There's a difference. I chose to live my life instead of performing in yours. That's not a crime. It's called integrity. I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my gaze. I looked at Simon. He was crying now, though I couldn't tell if it was shame or self-pity. I'm leaving now, I said. Anyone who wants to join me is welcome. I turned toward the door and didn't look back. I was 3 steps out when my mother lost control. This is absurd. Her voice cracked. Diana has always been jealous. A liar. She was never stable. Clara. Uncle Robert's voice cut through, heavy, disappointed. Stop. My mother wheeled on him. Robert, you can't possibly believe. We all heard the recording, he said, standing slowly, his chair scraping. We heard you plotting this. Plotting to humiliate your own daughter for money. For Simon's firm. For the family. For yourself. Aunt Mara rose beside him. It's always been for yourself, Clara. We just didn't want to see. The dam broke. Voices erupted. I can't believe we came for this. 22 years you told us Diana was unwell. Poor Eleanor. She must have known all along. My mother spun, trying to answer each desertion, but they kept coming. My father remained frozen, staring at the tablecloth. He didn't defend her. He didn't defend himself. Simon had his head in his hands. This wasn't the plan, I heard him whisper. This wasn't supposed to happen. Plans fail, Diana said gently, almost pityingly. They usually do when they're built on cruelty. People were standing, gathering coats, heading for the door. Where are you going? My mother demanded. We're not finished. But they were finished with her. With this. Her voice turned desperate. Celia, wait. We can talk about this. I stopped at the door. No, Mom, I said quietly. We really can't. And I walked out. The night air hit my face, cool, clean, free. I stood on the sidewalk outside the Gilded Swan, heart pounding, hands trembling. But I was smiling. I couldn't help it. I was actually smiling. Celia, wait. I turned. 3 figures hurried out, young faces anxious. Jake, Mia, and Leo, my younger cousins. Mia reached me first, slightly breathless. Can we come with you? I blinked. What? We don't want to stay in there, Leo said, jerking his thumb back. That was monstrous. What they tried to do. Jake nodded vigorously. He was only 20, the youngest. My dad always said I should be more like Simon, but he hesitated, then squared his shoulders. I think I'd rather be like you. Something warm cracked open in my chest. Are you sure? I asked. Our parents can make their own choices, Mia said firmly. So can we. Behind them, more people streamed out. Some hurried to cars, heads down. Others clustered, talking in low tones. Through the glass, I could still see my mother. Standing alone now, arms wrapped around herself, watching everyone leave. You'll regret this. Her voice carried, muffled. All of you. Nobody turned back. Come on, I said to my cousins. There's a cafe around the corner. I could use some tea. And cake, Leo added. Definitely cake. We walked away together, 4 of us, a new kind of family. Behind us, the door of the Gilded Swan swung shut. That night, after the cafe, after goodbye,